Lonnie Franklin Jr. was living under the radar, married with 2 children, but he also had a secret double life, one as a ruthless serial killer. A reign of terror casts an ominous cloud over the city of angels. A demon is murdering innocent young women.
Young women are being snatched off of streets in South LA. Young black women.
Suddenly, the slaughtering stops, and the elusive killer is dubbed the Grim Sleeper.
There was this span of time where they weren't aware of any murders. That's why they were referring to him as the Grim Sleeper.
But he wakes with a vengeance.
The coroner list had potentially 38 bodies.
Police are stumped until the killer makes one critical mistake. He lets this woman live.
We thought you were dead.
He thought I was dead.
It was an ugly era in South Los Angeles. Crack wars were rampant and crime was at an all-time high. Jill Stewart, former managing editor of LA Weekly, says it was the perfect time for a serial killer to strike.
I think it allowed serial killers to operate in silence. You couldn't tell who was killing who. We just called it random violence.
So when Deborah Jackson was found shot to death and dumped in this alley, police first assumed it was a random drug hit, until the bodies of more and more young women started to pile up.
What was he doing?
He was hunting for women.
35-year-old Henrietta Wright and 23-year-old Barbara Ware are found shot dead. Their partially clothed bodies left in dark alleys.
Yes, I like to report a murder or a dead body.
Police received this anonymous 911 call from someone saying he witnessed a man dumping Barbara's body.
Only thing you can see out is her feet.
Police actually suspect the caller may be Barbara's real killer, but have no proof.
What's your name?
Oh, I don't stand anonymous.
3 dead women, all shot and dumped in nearby alleys. LAPD homicide detective Darren Dupree says it may have been the first sign a serial killer was on the prowl in South LA.
They were checking vehicles, cars, people. So many people were questions. There was people who they thought possibly could have been the suspect.
And then Bernita Sparks turns up dead. But where she is found raises questions about the serial killer theory.
She was found inside of a trash dumpster, and almost all of these victims were found in alleyways.
Were these 2 separate cases?
There were several serial killers going around South Central LA when the crack epidemic hit. It was a hard time deciphering who killed each one.
Was this the evil work of 2 different killers? Cops are stumped when Mary Lowe turns up dead in another alley.
A lot of them were covered with trash from, the alleyways, whether it be an old mattress or, in one case, a car engine.
This time, cops catch a much-needed break. A witness tells police he saw Mary getting into a souped-up orange Ford Pinto with an unknown man.
They even did DMV studies of every orange Pinto in the entire Southern California area.
But before they can locate the car, they find another half-naked body in an alley. 22-year-old Lucretia Jefferson.
He never really went outside that comfort zone.
He knew the alleyways, he knew the people, he knew everything.
I think each time a woman was murdered and it would be reported in the news, and he was probably waiting and say, hey, they haven't caught me yet.
The killer had a definite MO, but detectives also notice a pattern with his victims. Most of them had cocaine in their bodies. Police suspected the killer was luring the women into his car with the promise of drugs, but instead giving them a bullet.
I think when someone got feisty with him or they had an attitude with him, those are the ones he chose to kill.
Porter Alexander Jr. says his 18-year-old daughter, Monique Alexander, was always spunky and had recently taken up with the wrong crowd. She was exactly the type of young woman the killer was targeting.
He said, I want to go to the store. I said, okay. I said, please go. When you go, come back home, will you please? She said, okay, Dad. And so I lay on back and I fell off to sleep.
reporter woke up to a nightmare.
2 weeks after Monique disappeared, her body was found dumped in this alley just 10 minutes from her family's home.
You didn't know at that time that your daughter was the victim of a serial killer. You didn't even know that there was a serial killer.
I did not.
The LAPD starts to piece together a blueprint linking 7 of the murders. All are shot by a small .25 caliber handgun.
All of these murder victims were all shot from left to right, front to back, in a downward direction. So that was consistent with being seated in the right front passenger seat of a vehicle and the driver turning towards you and shooting you.
But the key would be in the DNA. It was all swabbed off the victim's breasts, and it all matched.
Lo and behold, we wound up with the same DNA profile.
However, at the time, DNA was not an advanced crime-fighting tool. There was no database and no way to identify the killer.
He was still a needle in a haystack.
But instead of warning the public and women of South LA, Jill Stewart says the LAPD made a highly controversial decision to keep the serial killer theory a secret.
They were trying to figure out who he was. They didn't want to spook him, send him out of state, for example. But that has a two-edged sword.
If you don't let him know that you're on to him,
Right.
he can kill freely.
Yes, he's just thinks he's free to go ahead and keep doing what his evil son of a bitch has been doing all this time.
And that's exactly what he did. The serial monster was soon back in business and on the prowl for his 8th victim. But when he found Denetria Washington, his number was up.
He's shot you.
Yes.
He is sexually violating you.
Yes.
Driving you around.
Right.
And you're dying.
Yes. And he didn't want to save me.
Coming up, what happened inside the killer's car.
How could you kiss me and do all this and I'm bleeding?
And the police interrogation of
the Grim Sleeper.